This video is going to go ahead and wrap this up here. We've already completed modeling everything in our scene. We've seen how throughout the different volumes 1 and 2 and now 3, we've seen how we can model everything here in this house, from moldings and baseboards to, you know, drapes that look natural hanging down like fabric, sofas and furniture, different things like that. So it's been a great exercise for learning how to model different types of things, and I'm sure that you've gotten a lot out of it, especially if you followed along since volume 1. Alright, so with that said, what we're going to do now is we're going to render this out using mental ray. We're going to do an ambient occlusion render to make this look real nice and basically create a very nice clay ambient occlusion style render to basically show off your modeling work. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up the mental ray renderer. I'm going to come up to the rendering menu. I'm going to open up the render setup window, which is F10 is the shortcut. I'm going to go ahead and close all of these rollouts. I'm going to go to the assigned renderer rollout, which is the last one here. You notice that default scanline renderer is usually the renderer that 3ds Max chooses by default. So I'll click on this button and choose the mental ray renderer, which is a great renderer. And what I'm going to do is just close that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create my ambient occlusion material that I'm going to need for this scene. So to do that, I'm going to hit M on the keyboard to open up the material editor and move it to the side here. I'm going to take the first slot up here in the top left, and I'm just going to use a standard blend shader. And in the diffuse port right here, I'm going to click on this little empty square, which is basically going to open up the material map browser. I'm going to select the first material here, the ambient occlusion material, which has a little yellow icon. That means it works with mental ray. If you haven't loaded up mental ray as the production renderer yet, you probably won't see this. All these mental ray nodes are hidden from view. So let's go ahead and select the ambient occlusion node right there. If I go ahead and do a test render using Shift and Q to do that, by default this is what I've got. Mental ray is going to use the final gather indirect illumination mode. By default, we want to go ahead and turn that off. We won't need it. Also, to speed up our render time, you notice that everything's rendering out right now with the default materials that they all have. We're going to change that. We're going to select everything in the scene and apply the clay material that we've created here. We're using ambient occlusion. So let me close the material editor here. You notice that these containers are closed right now, and that's not good, because what it means is that we won't be able to apply the material to the objects in the container. So let's take all the containers that are closed in our scene and let's open them up. So I'll just click edit in place to pop that open. Edit in place to open that one up. And I've got this one over here, the clock that we did in volume 2, the previous volume to this one. If edit in place is grayed out, which is the case here, just click on make all unique and that'll force it open. Okay, so I think that should be all the containers. Let me see here. The hanging lamp here has a container, but it's also open. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here and I'm going to select everything in my scene. Okay? And I'm going to open up the material editor again. And with this material selected, I'm going to click this little icon that has a little green cube. It's the assign material to selection icon. Once I do that, everything that was selected has this material applied to it. So now let's go ahead and let's do a render here to see what we have. And you'll notice that doesn't look too great. Everything's really dark. We can see a little bit of something, but it doesn't look too good. So I'm going to hit escape to cancel the render, close that out. The reason that's happening is because our max distance is set to 0 right now. What I'm going to do is set that to 10 feet, and I'm going to render again. By giving it a limited distance of 10 feet, we'll be able to see the ambient occlusion effect take place. But it doesn't look too great, and the reason it doesn't look too great is because the default lighting in our scene is messing up the ambient occlusion effect. So to get rid of the default lighting, what I'm going to do is, let me close this, let me go to the creation tab, I'm going to switch over to the light icon, and I'm going to grab myself a standard light. A simple Omni light will suffice. And when you create a simple Omni light or any light in 3ds Max, the default light gets shut off automatically. So now we have this Omni light. But I don't want the Omni light to be on, so I'm going to go ahead and take it and turn it off by going to its Modify tab and unchecking the On parameter. That'll pretty much turn the light off. And now you notice everything just turns black in our scene because we don't have a light. And if I render again from inside the room here, we should get a different result. And you notice that we actually don't. Everything just comes out black. And the reason that's happening is because if I hit 8 on the keyboard to open up the environment and effects window here, you notice that my ambient parameter is set to pure black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to set it to white. Close that. Render again. And now we can actually see what's going on. That's because the ambient occlusion shader works best when you're using scene ambience. And our scene ambience by default is turned off. It's set to black. So we had to turn it on, and I set it to white so that it's completely on. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the material here. If I do a render, here you notice that everything looks pretty interesting. The ambient occlusion effect is great for bringing out details in 3D models and is really good for showing a nice clay sort of black and white neutral render that puts the focus of your eyes on the models. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit this little clone button that has the little 2 gingerbread characters right there. And that'll basically create a copy of that render so I can compare it afterwards. What I'm going to do is come over here to the material editor. And I'm going to turn on this reflective parameter right there. And you'll see when I do a render again, the results that I get. This creates a reflective occlusion type of effect where the occlusion is darker because it's basically reflecting itself. So you notice that the details are a little bit more visible. So if you like this render that's a little bit lighter and some of the details get kind of lost in the white, that's perfectly fine. Me, however, I kind of like this look better. The reflective occlusion looks a little bit darker and you can see details a little bit better. So I'm going to keep that on. You also notice that we have some kind of fuzzy effect here, these artifacts of like speckling all over our image here. Looks like if we took a picture with a camera and the camera had a lot of dust on the lens. To get rid of that, what we need to do is increase the samples over here. Right now it's set to 16, which renders out very fast but with a lot of artifacts. If we increase that to 128, we'll get ourselves a much better render, but it's going to be a little bit slower. So you'll notice that most of the artifacting went away. There's still some of it left, so it'd probably be better to take this up to about maybe 256. And you don't have to use numbers that are a power of 2, like 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and so on and so forth. That's just the way that my brain has been conditioned to think. I use computers a little bit too much, in case you can't tell. So you could set this to 100 or 200 or 362, whatever you really want to use. Okay, so as we increase the samples, this will look much nicer with less artifacts, but it's going to go ahead and take longer to render, so it's pretty much a trade-off. Last but not least, what I'm going to also do is turn on my NURBS toggle. Since we're not doing any more modeling, we're finished with modeling with this project, with this tutorial series. We don't need to model anything else. So let's go ahead and turn on our NURBS toggle for all the objects that need it. The cushions already have NURBS toggle turned on. So I'm going to turn on NURBS toggle for that, for that, and for the rug. And just have a look around your scene and see if there's anything else that needs the NURBS toggle turned on. If there is, go ahead and activate it. I don't think there's anything else left here to turn on NURBS toggle with. So let's do a quick render here of this sofa, see what it looks like. I want to thank you for following up with this series. I want to thank you for choosing i3 Tutorials as your modeling training partner. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this series of tutorials, Production Instruction with 3ds Max 2010. We'll be doing more things like this that are more production focused, not so beginnerish, so to speak, but a little more intermediate and much more advanced to basically get some big projects done like this. This was a pretty big project. It spanned many volumes, and it was a lot of work, and it took a lot of time to do, but I hope that you enjoyed it and you learned a lot from it, and you come away with a lot of knowledge as to using the graphite modeling tools, also known as the modeling ribbon. It's new in 3ds Max 2010, and it's a great addition. Honestly, I don't know how I used to use 3ds Max before using the modeling ribbon. I don't know how anybody could have used 3ds Max to model anything without the modeling ribbon. 3ds Max is already pretty good with the modeling ribbon, without it in older versions. But man, those graphite modeling tools make such a huge difference when you're working on something and you need to get some pretty complex tasks done fast. Okay, so we can see in the renders that these little seams we created for the sofa and the furniture here really make a big difference. Huge difference. They really make things look a lot nicer and a lot more professional. Okay, so that's going to do it. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll choose i3 Tutorials in the future for any future training needs that you may need. Remember that we not just cover 3ds Max, we also cover Maya and Softimage and other software. So be sure to check into our website, come to our forums, let us know what you think about our training and so on and so forth, and hope to see you around, and hope to provide some more professional high-grade training for you in the future for all your computer graphic needs. Thanks a lot and take care.